Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast, the start of another week, episode 143. We're recapping the whole weekend for you guys, but really the whole weekend belonged to UFC 266. Dominic Slee, how are you feeling after being on the come down?
It's one of those, day after fight hangovers, I suppose. And boy, did UFC 266 deliver top to bottom, 14 fights, nearly every one of them absolutely incredible with great takeaways. We're going to talk about our biggest ones, the biggest fights, the best performances, all that today. It's going to be a blast. And I'm feeling damn good, Noah. How about yourself?
Feel good. I did have a interesting night, I guess you could say. So, you know what? I'll detail it on here. I'll give the details.
Okay.
So I watched the fights at a friend's house, the house I'm always at.
Yeah.
Fights end around what time would you say, Dom? Like 1?
It is
a little
about
before 1.
1. Yeah, 1 o'clock.
Okay. Another guy that I'm friends with that hangs out there comes back from the bars at like 2. Because I'm staying up to watch the press conference.
Yeah.
Because I expect to hear Dana speak. Doesn't happen.
Right.
So that's already throwing off this night.
Yeah.
But then my friend shows up. And he comes in. He's like, dude, I want McDonald's. I'm so hungry. And I'm like, I want McDonald's too. And he's like, all right, I'm going to DoorDash it. So we DoorDash McDonald's. But Dominic, I don't know if you remember this from your days at Bowling Green. That McDonald's down towards the highway,
Okay,
is off the fucking hook at that hour.
Oh yeah.
Post bars, that McDonald's is out. The line is out on the street and everything.
Yeah, they're swimming in money there.
So it's a long wait if you go there. So our wait was going to be like, we ordered it at probably 2:30.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get to our location until about 4.
Oh, Lord.
But we're like, all right, we can do this. So I think we're just chilling. Like, we're getting exhausted. I'm getting exhausted. Like, I'm just like, okay, I'm not even that hungry anymore. I just want to go to bed. But now I'm in too deep.
You're committed. Right.
Yeah. So then 4 comes and still nobody's picked up the food. 4:15 comes. Our driver has waited in line for a while. He's been waiting forever. And we're like, man, come on, dude. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And then he cancels the order.
Oh.
At like 4:15 in the morning. We're like, well, now we're in too deep. So I drive us over to that McDonald's. I'm like, we will get McDonald's, damn it.
Right.
Line's not too long at this point. Still more cars than you would expect. So we get in line, and we're like debating it. We're like, is this really worth it? We could just go to bed. Like, I'm not even that hungry anymore. But we decide to stay to par for the course.
Yeah.
Stay, go down with the ship, if you will. And then we're getting closer, and I look at the menu, and I can see it's breakfast items.
Oh.
Fuck. I'm like, it's breakfast. And he's like, all right, well, that sucks, but we'll switch it up a little bit. We get up to order, and they're like, all right, hello, we are breakfast only, cash only. So if that's okay, then go ahead with your order. I'm like, you're what now? Breakfast only, cash only. Come again. Breakfast only. Yeah, I heard that part. What was the second part?
Yeah.
Cash only.
I'm
Well, you got any
no
cash on you? I had $9 in cash on me. The reason being that I had faulty purchases made on my debit card this past week. So I had to cancel my card, and I've been carrying cash.
Yeah.
But I was not smart. Didn't get enough cash out to last me until I get my card. So I only had $9 left. And I'm like, so I spent my last $9 on 6 sausage burritos from McDonald's and a large Coke to split with my buddy. So the lesson here, ladies and gentlemen, is never, ever go to McDonald's during those hours. Nothing good can come of it.
That is life lessons with Noah today.
Nothing good can come of it. All right. Dominic, any thoughts on that before we move on?
It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances, especially after an incredible night of fights where you're really on a high, and that's such a quick come down, it seems. So
yeah.
But were the burritos good?
Oh, yeah. All three of them were fantastic. I mean, the thing is, though, we'll see if I'm able to eat today. We'll see if I can find something in the garbage because that was the last of my money. And it's Sunday, and there ain't no banks giving me money today. So I'll keep you guys updated if I eat or not. But regardless, let's get into the fight announcements.
All right.
First, we start with the denouncement. The bad news just carries over.
Yeah.
Aljamain Sterling, the current UFC bantamweight champion, is out of his scheduled rematch with Petr Yan. This was supposed to happen October 30th at UFC 267 in Abu Dhabi. Dominic, I think a lot of people aren't too surprised about this one. It seemed like Aljamain was kind of doing a pretty quick turnaround for a guy coming off a neck surgery. So not a lot of people being too surprised. Some of Aljamain's interview with Ariel, he didn't seem all that 100%. You know, he was talking a lot about his recovery. Seemed like it was falling behind and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I can't say I'm surprised about this one, but my question for you involves a replacement because that's very clear that an interim title is going to be introduced and Petr Yan will stay on this card. But TJ Dillashaw will not be available.
Yeah.
His knee looked like hamburger 6 days ago due to his knee surgery. But good for him that he's getting that fixed. However, because that clear number one contender after Yan doesn't get the shot, so who do you think should get it, and maybe who do you think will?
So, I mean, it really comes down to two, but I feel like it's still pretty clear who should, and it's simply Corey Sandhagen, right? Because he had the number one contender fight with TJ Dillashaw, one of the best fights of the year, tit for tat for 5 rounds. You could have argued that Sandhagen won the fight. TJ ultimately gets the nod. TJ is unable to fill in due to his knee surgery. So in step Corey Sandhagen versus Petr Yan. I think that's a fantastic matchup. And, you know, Sandhagen's a guy that the UFC has been high on for quite some time. They even basically made a pinky promise, I think he said, after his fight with TJ, with Sean Shelby it was, where, you just go fight one more and win and you'll still get the title fight. Well, looks like he might not have to fight one more at all. He might step in there. And, I have no problem with it at all. It's weird because it would be one of the first, not the first interim title fights ever. Yeah, with two guys coming in to fight for the belt, both coming off of losses. Mm-hmm. So definitely a unique story there, but it feels so right at the same time. I have no issue at all. Corey Sandhagen, Petr Yan.
See, I'm a little surprised because you typically are the guy that would be very, at least out of the two of us, I feel like you'd be more the stickler on the whole coming in off a loss. I thought Rob Font would definitely be the guy that you might choose to be in that title fight, but kind of agree with you. Rob Font would have been fine. I would have been completely, honestly, either one of them.
Yes.
Like, I don't think Sandhagen is like a million times more deserving than Font. Like, Sandhagen, I think, still has the higher ceiling of the two in the division, in my opinion. And, not to overlook Rob Font, I'm just purely speculating. But in terms of in this matchup, I mean, Sandhagen had a super close fight with TJ Dillashaw. Yeah. A lot of people think Corey Sandhagen won that fight. So, it was a loss, but like being that close kind of makes sense. And Petr Yan, obviously, I know he lost his last fight via disqualification, a fight that he was purely dominating towards the end there against Aljamain. So it's weird circumstances that led us here to the first title fight where both guys come off losses. That sounds weird.
Yeah.
But it makes sense once you actually kind of dig a little deeper,
Exactly.
Weird how Petr Yan getting matched up. He seems to always get matched up with guys coming off losses. Jose Aldo.
True.
That was a loss in his debut against Marlon Moraes, and now here with Corey Sandhagen. It appears Sandhagen will be the replacement too.
Yeah.
Just not sure if that'll be announced before this gets posted, but it looks like that's where we're heading. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. It kind of changes up the dynamics of the matchup too.
Oh,
just
yes.
we feel like we kind of know what we might get from Sterling and Yan too. Just since the first fight, Sterling looked good early, but faded fast, and Yan really took over. While I still give Yan a pretty big advantage in this fight, Sandhagen's fantastic and can really do some things that, dare I say, pull rabbits out of that. But
yeah,
more so just the guy's very skilled on the feet. But Yan has showed to just be a complete buzzsaw that can really, really dominate a fight anywhere it goes. So it's going to be interesting, though, just because we haven't seen these two fight and really wasn't expecting to for a while. And here we are getting it a lot sooner than we thought.
I can't say I'm not excited.
Mm-hmm. Following that one, we've already talked about this one, but it's official. And due to kind of everything that happened Saturday night, I feel like it's worth talking about again. November 13th gets its headliner.
Yep.
It's official. Max Holloway will have to get through one more against number 3 ranked Yair Rodriguez, making his return nearly 2 years to the day for when he beat Jeremy Stephens. Dominic, match, if you go by rankings, this matchup makes perfect sense.
Of course.
Number 2, Brian Ortega just fought for the title Saturday night. So number 1, Max Holloway. Number 3, Yair Rodriguez. Haven't fought before. Makes perfect sense, right? However, you dig a little deeper into these resumes, and Yair Rodriguez's resume has set him up for a complete failure here. This is a guy who's fought 4 times since the start of 2018. 2 of those being to Jeremy Stephens, 1 no contest, and that lasted less than a minute. And then, so really he's got 3 wins, I think, since the start of 2018. That kind of inactivity is just not going to cut it against a guy like Max Holloway, who coming off of just killer type performances.
Yeah.
And a guy who's so motivated to get back to that title shot. Help me out here, Dominic. Tell me that the UFC's not kind of putting Yair in a no-win situation here.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way, right? Because, again, Holloway coming off that amazing performance against Cater, you could argue he doesn't even need to fight again. He's just such a gamer that he's like, you know what, screw it. If I can't get the fight, and he's waiting, obviously, for what happened at UFC 266, he wants to get another fight in. Who's left to check off that he hasn't beaten? Yair Rodriguez. Well, I will say it's a striker's delight on paper. It's a whole different beast for Yair, a huge step up, especially when you look at, okay, his last fight was against Jeremy Stephens. You look at where Jeremy Stephens is now in his career, and it's like, oh, Max Holloway, former champion. He's only getting better, it seems. So, yeah, it doesn't really point in a good direction for Yair. If he comes out and wins, it would be quite shocking, and he could earn himself a title shot off of it. We'll see what happens.
It will be quite shocking if he gets a win. I just think going in, like, man, the odds are stacked against him big time here. I'm not even sure how he is still ranked number 3 in the division.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I think that might speak to a lot of the stagnation that's kind of happened at the top of this division. This division's fantastic, but you've essentially had 2 guys fighting for the belt. Really, these top 3, if you go Volkanovski, Holloway, and Ortega, have dominated the title fights since 2018.
Yeah.
So Yair's kind of been able to skate by, I guess, in a way. Zabit falls out, so that kind of helps him even move up. It's just kind of weird how he's kind of been able to go under the radar. You ever watch those Royal Rumbles back in the day, Dominic?
Oh, yeah.
There was always that one guy that nobody liked, and he would try to hide outside the ring while everybody's fighting it all in the ring.
Yeah.
That feels like what Yair's doing while these featherweights have been beating the shit out of each other for the last few years, putting on bangers. No disrespect to Yair, though. Great fighter. I'm a little worried about him here. I think you're literally coming back after 2 years off to fight Max fucking Holloway.
Tough draw.
Yeah. But that's going to wrap it up for the fight announcements. And we're going to move on to a little sense of deja vu.
That's the worst feeling, huh?
Yep. And it doesn't get better when you look a little deeper here. According to ESPN, Jon Jones, that's right, Jon Jones is in the news, was arrested Friday morning for battery, domestic violence, and injuring and tampering with a vehicle. Now, Dominic, this comes less than 12 hours after Jon Jones had been inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame for his fight with Alexander Gustafsson. I watched the ceremony, his interview, or his speech. I mean, was very heartfelt. You know, he gave quite an emotional shout out or tribute to his fiance and kids who were there. So I know the easy answer here is not surprised, and you know, this is deja vu. It's happened so many times with Jon Jones. How could you be surprised? But well, I don't know if I'm just at this point, you know,
Done.
No, Dominic, hold on. Let me finish my point. I don't know if it's just that I'm kind of gullible, but I continue to fall for it. You know, I continue to believe in his recovery and his and what, you know, every time he kind of feels like he's building himself back up. And then it just always seems like maybe it's just for the cameras, or if he just really is trying to be that guy, but he maybe when he's drinking or partying, he just falls back into these habits. I don't know. Help me, you know, give me some help here. What's going through your mind after seeing this news?
It's just, this is the Jon Jones story, right? Something amazing happens in his athletic career or in, you know, in the UFC, and then it always seems that within a day it all just goes by the wayside here, and he does it again. This is like his 5th or 6th arrest since he's been in the UFC and been the champion and stuff. So it's just a bad look. And again, like you said, you can't help but want to cheer for the guy in a sense because you want to see him turn that page. But at some point, you just gotta kind of put that book on the shelf because it's just the same thing over and over again. This is awful. Again, we don't have all the details, so you don't want to speculate too much. But from what we read, it's truly something you don't want to see in the headlines with anyone, especially a huge sports star with so many eyes on them. And the fact that it happened right after being inducted into the Hall of Fame for his greatness and the fight with Gus and everything, it's just it's an uncomfortable situation for everybody. And, you know, Dana said it best. It seems like he's always had these demons to battle, and it looks like he still does to this day. So it just looks like he needs help. You know, I don't know if it's ever really been seeked before. And obviously we've seen him kind of go out of his way to do like service when it was required and all this stuff. But it really looks like he needs some help, whether that be, you know, a rehab or a therapy, or I don't know what the case may be. And I don't want to, again, dig into personal life too much of a fighter. But when it's someone that's so great and you see like he's already at the top of the list for so many people, and that's with all these other things in between. Imagine had none of this ever happened. You could times his accomplishments by 5, if not 10. So he's just a freak of nature that we unfortunately never really got to see the true potential, which is kind of crazy in my mind because you're like, well, what could his potential be? Look at all he's done. I do feel that way with Jon. So again, hopefully some help is on the way. And yeah, it's just an unfortunate, uncomfortable set of circumstances once again.
Yeah, he might be the best fighter of all time, but if we got to see him at reach his true potential, he would have clearly been the best fighter of all time.
Yeah.
And I mean, truthfully, does this arrest really prevent him from future bouts? I don't know. Probably not. I mean, he's still probably going to make that jump to heavyweight, and we'll probably still see him next year, likely fighting the winner, Ngannou, Ciryl Gane. It's just, you know, if you're the UFC, you do have to kind of wonder, like, is it worth it?
Yes.
You know, this has to cross your mind eventually. I mean, I'm sure they'll still go full speed ahead. And I can't blame them for it because I'm sure there's a lot of money to be made from a potential Ngannou Jones matchup. But at some point, is he too much of a liability? Can you trust him to be a champion outside of the octagon? I'm not even saying he's got to be a perfect human being. He can party, he can do whatever. But the problem is, if you're doing things that make it to where the UFC might have to strip you of a title, you know, if you're getting arrested for these kind of serious issues, you know, that doesn't put a lot of trust, a lot of faith in the UFC to have in him to really carry it out the right way. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm definitely disappointed again, and maybe that's egg on my face at this point, but I think a lot of it's just maybe it's all based on our own personal experiences, but I've seen a lot of people making fun of Jon Jones for this, and maybe rightfully so. Maybe he kind of deserves to have that little shit thrown at him, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I always feel like it's kicking a man while he's down, and this is a guy that's battled so many demons. We don't really know to what extent, and so I would. Anybody, I guess, that would care to listen, I would just recommend maybe don't continue bashing the guy while he's already, going through it. I mean, hey, the details of the arrest are there, not making him looked out to be like some great guy, but just, I don't know, just feels weird to kind of, for a guy who potentially is battling a lot of demons, to kind of continue to throw more at him just doesn't seem like a right mindset to have, in my opinion. But, to each their own.
Yeah.
Everybody want to get that clout on Twitter. Do whatever you want, I guess.
Right.
Anyways, before we move on to UFC 266, Dom, we got some things that we missed.
Of course. Dana
White, man, does so many interviews on the weeks of pay-per-views, and typically, while they're all good listens, and Dana White's always a fun guy to listen to talk. Problem is, you don't always get a lot of. There's not a lot of meat on the bones sometimes.
Yeah.
He typically keeps his cards close to his chest, if you will. But this week, man, he gave a lot of good bites for us to really dig into here and speculate on. He did an interview with Robbie Fox of Barstool Sports. We're big Robbie guys. We like Robbie.
Oh, yeah.
And he confirmed the UFC is planning right now Jorge Masvidal versus Leon Edwards, likely to happen in January. So, Dominic, hearing that, well, what does that make you think here, man? Does this fight feel like this is a fight that has a lot of history behind it, right? The three-piece in Minnesota that happened. That's kind of what kicked off Jorge Masvidal's run he went on that turned him into a star.
Mm-hmm.
But does it feel like this fight, for a long time, all the fans were clamoring for it? And it feels like we're at a point where people have kind of stopped asking for it for the most part. Have the UFC kind of missed the boat on this one, or is this still going to be a big fight?
See, this was a fight that at one point looked like it could be massive, right? Because Jorge was just beginning to come into that superstardom. Leon was obviously still on his win streak, and he had just gotten a win there in London as well on that same card. So, it felt like it at one point could have been much bigger. But, I mean, Jorge's, I guess, a bigger star now than he would have been then. It's just not really in the prime of that run that could have happened. But I digress. They've went on such different paths since that thing with the three-piece in the soda, the punching him backstage, and the trash talk and stuff happened. But I still feel like that hatred and the rivalry can still be there regardless. This is, guys like this, when they have history with one another, they want to have it settled eventually. So, better late than never is a great saying to put with this fight. It makes sense in terms of, implications with their future of the division. I know it may seem for Leon, and I'd like to think I'm a pretty decent supporter of Leon in terms of his title shot, but it's not in your cards. So you might as well go out and fight one more time against one of the biggest names in the sport, and Jorge Masvidal. It's a very good matchup stylistically too, so it could be a very fun fight. Leon, the real patient, technical boxer, and Jorge, a fantastic striker in his own right, but is going to bring that pressure to Leon. Won't really force him to fight his own fight. I think it's exciting, and it is a fight at the end of the day that makes sense, and I'm all for that here on this show.
Listen, if this fight becomes official, I want anybody who has accused the UFC of not being in support of Leon Edwards, you no longer allowed to listen to those people. Because even though he hasn't gotten a title shot, this will mean that his last two fights have been against Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. Leon Edwards, a guy who, really is a great fighter, But to be put in matchups with these stars who could be making big money with each other, we don't love the idea of Jorge Masvidal fighting Nate Diaz a second time, but you can't tell me that wouldn't make a lot more money than either of those two against Leon Edwards. So the UFC is investing in Leon Edwards with these matchups.
Yeah.
He does still have to go out there and perform, and against Nate Diaz for the better part of 25 minutes, he did. He looked really good. He put a beating on him. Problem is, that last minute's always going to be the thing that sticks with people.
Which is so unfortunate.
It really is. But now against Jorge Masvidal, I think what's crazy about this fight is when Jorge Masvidal kind of started that run he had where he just looked like he was baptizing people, I think is what he called it.
Yeah.
At the time, I totally favored Leon in that fight. I said, this is a bad matchup for Masvidal. I don't blame him for not wanting to take it. The guy's on this huge run. Go for the Nate Diaz fight. Like, don't make your money. Like, why would you take the Leon Edwards fight? And now that Jorge's come back down to earth, back-to-back title losses to Kamaru Usman, and Leon still looks very good. I almost think that this matchup has gotten a lot closer in my mind. And I don't know if that's just me getting, smarter or whatever, just growing in the sport, or if I just think that at this point, like I look at it like Leon's going to have a technical advantage, but Masvidal going to have a clear power advantage. And I would even say that I think Masvidal has more weapons than Leon in terms of weapons that could actually finish a fight, especially while Leon's just going to be so consistent, so precise.
Yeah.
Hard to find those holes. But Nate Diaz did find it with the one overhand that he was able to kind of land flush and hurt him. So that moment, while probably being more significant in the minds of MMA community than Dominic would prefer, but I do think that moment could say something about maybe the chin of Leon Edwards. Is it really able to hold up over the course of a fight with a guy like Masvidal, who's going to throw with a lot more venom behind his punches than Nate Diaz did.
Oh, yeah.
But also, Masvidal just got knocked out for the first time in a long time. Is he starting to fall on that downward spiral a little bit? Is his chin not going to hold up? Leon's no slouch either. So it's a great fight. And in some ways, the fight makes a lot of sense now. I get why people wanted it for the last couple of years and why everybody was begging for it.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it didn't really make sense until, like, in terms of, I guess I'm not speaking competitively. I'm speaking more, I guess, not necessarily even from a money-making perspective. It's like a combination of the two. I felt like the last couple of years, it was either Masvidal had bigger opportunities to make more money, or obviously he was in title fights for the last couple of years. So
yeah,
I felt like it didn't make sense to really do that fight because, like, why would he go for that when he's got these opportunities?
Exactly.
But now this opportunity, I think, makes perfect sense. You got Masvidal, who kind of doesn't have those opportunities right now. He's looking to get back into another title fight.
Yep.
Leon is really he's knocking on the door. It's this one, and then there's nothing left ahead besides another fight with Usman. Fight makes a lot of sense now, and I'm kind of surprised. I think it's interesting that people they don't seem as excited or as invested in this fight as they would have been, obviously,
right
when I guess the incident happened a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one?
It's time.
All right. Also, Kevin Iole and Robbie Fox, in their interviews with Dana, they did talk about Nate Diaz, and Dana confirmed that the UFC are currently talking to Nate about a fight. But Vicente Luque, the guy that had kind of had that back and forth with Nate on Twitter, it appears is not one of the opponents that they are talking to Nate about. So, Dominic, we can't always take everything Dana says, at his word. Obviously, again, this is a guy that will sometimes play cards close to his chest. There's a lot of negotiation stuff going on. Can't always believe everything you hear. However, let's take it at face value just so we can speculate a little bit here. So let's assume that Nate Diaz is being scheduled to fight here soon, and it won't be against Vicente Luque. My question is, who would that fight be against? Because timetable, we're in September, near in October.
Right.
I think a lot of people would say, oh, well, it must be the Conor trilogy. Completely disagree. They would not be talking to Nate right now about the Conor trilogy when Conor probably won't be able to fight till like June, July,
Yeah.
So who do you think this could be?
No, I think I have a clear person in my head because obviously it's not Jorge Masvidal either, right? So I think it's Tony Ferguson, my friend. I really do.
Nice,
I think it's two legends, two guys that the fans absolutely love, and two guys on the downward end, right? There's no debate in that statement. I don't think. Still both incredible fighters. I'm not saying that they aren't, but Tony, obviously on the losing streak, Nate on a losing streak as well, but still in a big fight. And this is a huge fight to me. And I think Tony testing the waters at maybe 170 would make sense right now too on this back half of his career, even though they could both fight at 155 as well. But I think it's a welterweight bout with Tony Ferguson really giving the fans a very, very fun fight that they've honestly been salivating for quite some time. And right now, I can't say it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I would definitely not be against that one. I think that would be a lot of fun. Obviously, it'd be quite a violent fight. And considering where both guys are in their careers, I feel like they are kind of on equal footing, at least you would think going in. So that one could be a lot of fun. I'm going to throw another name at you.
Okay.
And I think this one is less likely to have been brought up to him, I guess, in the lead up to this weekend. But coming off this weekend, what about Robbie Lawler?
Oh, you see, that would be fun as well because again, kind of in the same boat.
I wanted to wait and talk about it, I guess, once we talked about Robbie's fight with Nick. But there is kind of a built-in story there. You got the Robbie kind of smashing Nick, and Nate wanting to kind of avenge that loss, but also for Robbie. And for Nate, it would be a step up in competition, I would assume. I would like to think Nate at this point is just a better fighter, been in there more times than Nick. So it's a step up in that sense. And I mean, that's a fight that I don't know how that would go, truthfully. I mean, I think I would pick Nate going in, but Robbie looked fantastic Saturday. So it's really a fight that I think people would be invested in, that would have the story built in. And hey, ESPN, when they had Dana on, they had that little graphic package where it was talking about the Nick Diaz Robbie Lawler fight, but they were showing clips of Nate Diaz. They could just use that for this fight,
You're very right, Noah.
Last one here that we've missed on the Schmo had an interview with Kelvin Gastelum, who has hinted that the idea of going back to welterweight, the division that he started in the UFC, that he won the Ultimate Fighter in the UFC. Dominic, is this a good move for Kelvin Gastelum?
Well, I hope so, because this is a guy that when you look at him, you think, oh, probably is a welterweight, fits good in the weight class, has about a 5'9" height, and his frame just kind of looks built for 170. But when he used to fight there, he used to very much struggle with making the weight. He moved up to 185, had a little bit of success, but more losses. And in his last fight, he also nearly missed weight. So it's like, okay, well, he used to not make it 170, but now he can't make weight at 185. He's going to completely rearrange his camp, his lifestyle here. So it looks like he is going to move back to welterweight, along with leaving King's MMA in California, potentially go to Arizona, train with Henry Cejudo at his camp, which is also where Zhang Wei Li is training for her rematch with Rose Namajunas, which is interesting. So, I'm a big Kelvin fan, regardless win or lose. I think he's always in fun fights. I think he's a great fighter, very kind of underappreciated in a sense, the way or the amount of competition that he faces in terms of top level guys. So, if he can do all the right things, maybe get a nutritionist in there for the entirety of his training camps, whether it be 8, 10, 12 weeks, I think he can get back to 170. I think he fits much better there. And there's a lot of fun fights to be had because the division has changed so much since he was last there. So, shout out Kelvin Gastelum. I'm excited to see kind of what this future may hold. Again, a guy that with a lot of fight years, yes, but in terms of age, still very young, like Max Holloway, 29, 30 years old, which is crazy considering all that they've accomplished and done. So, yeah, I'm excited to see maybe this new chapter of Kelvin's career.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Right.
Optimistic because I think it's a better division for him if he can make the weight. Just his frame is just more of a welterweight than of a middleweight. He has struggled a lot at middleweight when it comes to fighting bigger, taller, lankier, longer reach fighters. Welterweight, I think he would be a force to be reckoned with. The problem is, can he make it, and can he make it, consistently?
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I think that the idea of getting a nutritionist, I think it does wonders for a lot of people. We don't even remember how Khabib used to struggle mightily to make 155 pounds. He even had to pull out of a title fight with Tony Ferguson for that at one point.
Yep.
Got a nutritionist, and we never saw any problems with it again. And he looked cut after that. So
yes, he did.
I definitely think it could be, if that's all it takes for him to kind of be able to make that weight, awesome. Hope that's true. I definitely think it would be smart for Kelvin, who feels like he's kind of in no man's land right now,
Exactly. Yeah.
So moving on to UFC 266, we start with our fight of the night, and dare I say, our fight of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And Dominic, this headline reads like the front of every Under Armour shirt on a Kohl's clearance rack in 2010, because respect is earned, not given. And both these guys, in different ways, earned that respect Saturday night.
Yeah.
Volkanovski coming in as the champion, who had, we've done it on this podcast at times. It felt like the public in general had been even worse to the guy. So much about those Max Holloway fights, beating a fan favorite like Max, but then having such a close fight with Max in the second one where a lot of people thought Max won. Feels like Volkanovski hasn't quite gotten the respect that he should have gotten as a champion. Maybe some people thinking he's a paper champion, things like that. But after this performance, I don't see how you can continue to kind of hold that against the guy. I know that maybe until he fights Max the third time, and if he beats him a third time, then maybe after that you can't really say anything. But this was a fantastic performance from Alexander Volkanovski from a lot of different variables. If you want to go purely off of the damage he delivered to Brian Ortega, he was clearly in control of this fight going into round 5. I mean, up 4-0. I scored about 4-1.
Yeah, same.
Right at 49-46, but I was very close to doing 49-45. I think round 4, you could have argued, was a 10-8 round. Volkanovski just looked super composed. He was in his game plan the whole time. He's so good at – he sets up a look to get his opponent to kind of read it and kind of assume what he's going to do based on that look. And then he completely just fakes him out and does something else.
Yep.
So good at that. And you saw it time and time again in here. And Ortega did some good things, and I'll talk about that. But I just got to give a moment. Volkanovski is one of the pound-for-pound best in the UFC right now. And with the performance like this, his stock should only go up. Because not only did he deliver the goods in terms of damage and really putting it on Ortega at times, but he also had to battle from some adversity. Round 3 is one of the craziest rounds in MMA this entire year that I've ever watched in my life.
Yes.
And I thought when Brian Ortega got that guillotine on Volkanovski, I thought that fight was a wrap.
Yep.
I said, it's over. I've never seen someone battle so much through a submission attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Volkanovski was fucking just, his whole body was shaking. He's like fighting out of it. For a guy like Ortega, this is the best jiu-jitsu in the entire UFC.
Yeah.
And he battled not out of just that, battled out of his second submission that was just as tight later. God, I mean, what willpower. I mean, both of those, he had to be close to going out, and yet was able to persevere.
Yeah.
So Dominic, I I know I talked about Volkanovski. I'm going to let you talk about Brian Ortega's contributions to this fight. And I guess where do these guys divulge into next? Where do they've met here. Ortega took a lot of damage again. Another title fight. Volkanovski, obviously, big win. Where their careers go from here?
Yeah, I mean, I just got to give a shout out to the champ as well, real quick. Absolutely fantastic performance. And again, I kind of said it on Friday. I'm, of course, a huge Max Holloway fan, as is nearly everyone. So obviously, it sucked seeing Max lose the belt. But yeah, Volk deserves the respect now more than ever. He's, again, as I said on Friday, one of the most underrated, underappreciated champions. And that should be no longer. He's clearly one of the most elite level fighters in the world right now. This was the performance you should want to see out of a guy like this that was getting so much slack for the way he fights, the way he chooses to go about getting his victories. No, not anymore. This guy was coming for Ortega's head, but in the smartest of ways that you can. Being able to escape that adversity against a guy like Brian Ortega is absolutely second to none. No one else is getting out of that guillotine. And he essentially was like, you know what, if I'm not getting out, I'm damn sure not tapping to lose my belt. You're going to have to put me to sleep. And he never did. So phenomenal performance by the champ, earning his second title defense. Brian Ortega, another tough loss. His second shot at gold. He fails once more. But, man, in both these fights, he's really showed his heart, especially here in this one. Not quite the beating he took from Max Holloway, but still very much compromised throughout this bout, especially in the mental side, because when he had those submissions, he had the guillotine, he had the triangle, at one point even had a Darce. He had 3 great submissions. That just shows how much high level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu he carries. But you could see after that third round, when he was not able to finish Volk and that horn sounded to go back to their corners to get to round 4, he just laid on the mat. And you just got to wonder what is going through his head right now. Like, damn, I can't imagine how just gut-wrenching it would be to know that you just threw everything you had at the champ and it still wasn't enough. But then, after being dominated very much so in round 4, nearly a 10-8, I know one judge even scored it a 10-8, battles back in round 5 so much so I gave him round number 5. I thought Ortega was coming alive again all of a sudden. He looked good on the feet, went until the very final horn sounded, threw some heavy shots, man, that definitely got Volk's attention on the feet as well. So this was definitely one of the greatest featherweight title fights of all time, one of the greatest featherweight fights in general of all time, and definitely the front runner for fight of the year right now in 2021. Incredible title bout. Again, I guess you asked 2 questions. What could be next for Ortega now? He's in a weird spot. And we talked about this on Friday because he's now had 2 title shots, one against Max, one against Volkanovski. He lost both, but these 2 are obviously still right there at the very top of the division. And obviously he is as well. So I'm not taking anything away from him, but you got to think if the belt's going to be passed back and forth or held by one of those 2 for the foreseeable future, he's going to have to really go back and probably string together, I'd say probably 3 wins at a minimum if those 2 stay at the top. So go back to the drawing board, take some time off, see him back in 2022. And maybe it's too early to be matchmaking because this guy's a lot more fresher right now, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think Mr. Brian Ortega and Giga Chikadze in a 5-round fight night main event makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah. And, if Giga's been calling for the elite level talents, there's one guy that's available for you right now if it's not going to be Korean Zombie. So, yeah, absolutely amazing fight. Going in, I knew it was as 50-50 fight as you're going to have. I couldn't decide a winner until within, 30 minutes before the fights even started. So it lived up to everything and then some. I'm so happy we finally got to see it. And absolutely incredible performances.
Well, I guess if you touched on Volkanovski, then I guess I will touch on Brian Ortega. And obviously, this guy put on I'm not even surprised at what we saw from Brian Ortega in terms of heart, in terms of willpower. Not even surprised. Max Holloway fight proved that he's got that in him, and here it just more so confirmed that he still has it. He took some hard shots here. And, there was even some clash of heads. It seems like the clash of heads is actually what kind of probably concussed Ortega for the rest of that fight, which is unfortunate. But still, Volkanovski landing at a very high clip here, not to be overlooked. Yeah, it felt like once those submission attempts failed, I was a little nervous Ortega might just – it seemed like he, for a minute there, was kind of mentally had lost.
Yeah.
But then to come back the way he did, round 4 was even a tougher round for him, probably the most one-sided round of the fight. And then round 5 comes out, and it's like knowing that I love it when guys like him who are the guys trying to win the belt, when they understand that they're down on the scorecards and they just go in there and look to just try to make something happen. You know, we'll go for it. Why wouldn't you? You know, as a guy, and this is going to be a complaint I'm going to have in our next fight about the person going for the belt there. Here, this Ortega left nothing on the table. He did everything he could at Volkanovski and definitely did get his attention late in that 5th round. This is just the kind of performance you want from a guy like this. And while, yes, he might, need a couple more, to get back to a potential title shot with either one of these, with Volkanovski or Max Holloway. I think with the kind of excitement that his fights bring, I think, you see a performance like this and string it even with the Max Holloway loss, which was more one-sided, but still the same heart. And then you look at the Korean Zombie fight and how much fun it was just watching him evolve. I think the UFC is going to have a hard time turning him down if he continues to put on shows like this. I mean, he brings out the best of his opponents sometimes. And Volkanovski here getting probably his most exciting win in a UFC octagon, and that definitely will pay dividends for Volk as he looks to garner some respect.
Oh, it definitely will.
You might be right about being too early to matchmake for Ortega. It's probably true. Who knows how long of a layoff he's going to take here. Just, took a lot of damage. I like the idea of him fighting the loser, Max and Yair.
Yeah.
Especially if it is like Yair, I think that would be a fight that makes a lot of sense. Depending on how soon he wants to get back in there and how soon this guy wants to get back in there, maybe him versus Calvin Kattar.
Yeah.
2 guys that have, taken some damage in their last bouts. So a lot of that depends on the timing for when Calvin wants to get back in there, when Brian does. Just a couple options. But Volkanovski, obviously, winner of Max and Yair is what's next for him. Let's get in the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko.
It ain't nothing new.
Nope. Once again, defends her women's flyweight title with the TKO over Lauren Murphy 4 minutes into round number 4. And like we said on Friday, Dom, are we even surprised? This is nothing new for a Valentina Shevchenko fight. She looked dominant. She looked completely levels above her opponent here. And that's why I'm going to spend my time. And, this isn't – do I want to say – like, obviously we can give some credit to Valentina, talk about what she did in this fight and whatnot, but everybody – like, it's already known. Like, this is what was going to happen. Like, I feel like I can't even spend a lot of time talking about her greatness here because it's just so expected at this point. So I'm going to spend my time talking about how disappointing of a performance this was from Lauren Murphy.
Okay.
I get it. You're in an uphill battle, and I'm someone who's never been in there, so this is totally take this with a grain of salt for anybody listening, watching. But this is your title shot, probably the only title shot you're ever going to get if you lose. I saw no urgency from her here. Nothing. She seemed to be fighting not to get finished rather than to win. And I just find that so confusing. I mean, I get like from a health standpoint, you don't want to get finished, but I don't think Lauren Murphy cares too much about that. It seemed like here she was like on autopilot. And I get it. You're going up against Valentina Shevchenko. Like, what can you really do? But I just didn't see anything from her. She looked tentative to even trade with Valentina. Like, there was nothing in here that told me that she was really going for it. And it's just disappointing because I think Valentina, she, even though we know what a level she is above the opposition in this division, it doesn't help if the people she's defending against aren't really looking to win or more so just looking to survive. You know, I've seen it with Jennifer Maia. I've seen it here. I'm just I need some women in this division to step up. I need someone that's going to at least like look to make it a fight, you know, rather than put on what we saw here. This isn't the kind of performance I want to see out of someone. This to me, I wanted to give her respect going in and say she deserved this title shot. I don't know if she did, if this is the kind of performance we're going to get. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because Valentina is just so many levels above everyone else in this division. And, you know, in this fight, specifically from Lauren, you kind of saw, like I said, kind of just fighting to not get finished and rather than to win. I think that the opponents are so aware of the threat that Valentina poses to them that they just cannot utilize a game plan at all. Because we said Friday, Lauren's only hope was to just charge Valentina, make this as gritty as possible. And there was none of that. And I think it's because they're so worried to get close and come in and get caught by Valentina that they just kind of stand there and Valentina just goes to work, man. So, you know, Lauren was on a 5-fight win streak, and it sucks that this is the title fight or the performance that she gets and puts out. But again, when there's such a dominant champion, there's only so much you can do, I suppose. And Valentina, I've said this about Amanda Nunes, and, you know, I'm going to say it here for Valentina. We're at the point with her where we should feel privileged and honored to even watch her step foot in the octagon, because every time she goes out there, it's so flawless. She's such a pure mixed martial artist in and out of the cage. And everything she does is just absolutely perfect. There's no flaws. I cannot spot you one flaw. I know I've never trained or anything like that, but damn it, I watch a lot of fights, and I have been for years, and there's not one thing I say or see that she does wrong. So it's just another title defense for her. That's number 6 now. She's running laps through this whole division. You literally look at the rankings right now, and every one of them have been defeated by her. So it's just a matter of, will there be anyone to threaten her at 125 pounds? Just when we thought it, you know, it would be Jessica Andrade, it wasn't even competitive at all. Then Lauren Murphy, 5-fight win streak, a lot of momentum, not even competitive at all. Then she ultimately gets the finish as well, just to add a cherry on top. She's unbelievable. I can't wait to see Valentina fight again. Lauren Murphy, glad you finally got your title shot. Obviously, poor performance. But again, when it's Valentina, you can't expect much more of her opponents at 125 pounds.
I don't know, Dom. I feel like I agree. Like, it's, you know, you look at Andrade, a girl that always brings it, and how one-sided of her loss was against Valentina and how she really wasn't able to do anything. But I at least saw an effort. Here, like, I just saw going through the motions, and it's just, to me, I feel like I can expect more. Like, I can at least expect someone to at least try to win. I mean, it doesn't help if you're. I mean, it's not going to help this for Valentina to be so dominant if these contenders are just getting in there and are already losing before they step into the octagon. I don't know. My question for you though. Prediction, real quick.
Yeah.
Next fight for Valentina, will it be another contender at flyweight, or does she fight Amanda Nunes a third time?
No, I could give 2 shits about that third fight. I don't need to see that again. I think it's going to be the winner of Alexa Grasso, JoJo Calderwood. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. There's no one else to fight. I mean,
that's okay. Again, I'm asking for a prediction, not your thought. Like, is that what you're assuming will happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You.
I think it might be Amanda Nunes the third time. And again, I'm not big on that fight either. And I think, I don't know why, I swear, because I started hearing about it more this weekend, and Dana was finally like, well, if they both win their fights, I'm at least interested in hearing about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, Dana, you're supposed to be on our side.
Yeah.
You don't need to see it again. I don't know. I don't think it's the fight that people want it to be, you know?
Right. Especially
Amanda's
twice.
Amanda's beat her twice, and regardless of how close they were, or if you thought if you thought Valentina won one or whatever, it doesn't really matter, I guess, because I just think that if Valentina goes in there and beats Amanda in a third fight via decision, would it really change anything? Like, in terms of women's GOAT status, like, sure, some people would probably be like, well, Valentina's the women's GOAT, but Amanda beat her twice before that. Exactly. So it's like, is she, it just feels like it just makes everything more confusing. It's a big fight, but truthfully, I think you're right. I think there's a good chance Joanne Calderwood and Alexa Grasso winner is the next one in there, which I don't know. We'll talk about that when we get there, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
talk about the 5-round feature bout here. This one was fun.
Yeah, it's such a weird feeling for this one. Damn it, I felt weird going into it, and I felt just as weird watching the fight.
You know, this fight, Robbie Lawler, by the way, gets the TKO over Nick Diaz, 44 seconds, round number 3. A lot of weird stuff going into the fight. You know, fight week was an interesting one. The sudden weight change, some of Nick's comments, you know, again, some of this typical Diaz shenanigans, some of it.
Yeah.
But some of those comments also just felt a little more like there's a little more gravity to them, you know, talking about not really wanting to fight, feeling like you have to fight kind of thing. Just some interesting comments for sure. And, you know, I think this fight kind of held true to what I think some of our fears were, but also what some of us were hoping this fight could be. I wanted this fight to be fun, most importantly, and it was. 2 legends got in there and traded for 3 rounds, or I guess for 2 rounds and then 44 seconds round 3. Robbie Lawler came out the gate immediately looking to pressure. Diaz in the beginning of round number 1 threw that like spinning wheel kick that looked very just didn't look like the most athletic move in the world. Yeah. And I was a little nervous when that happened.
I was immediately worried.
I was like, that's what we're getting.
Yeah.
But luckily, we didn't really get a lot of Diaz shenanigans in the octagon. You know, none of the laying down like he did against Silva. None of the trash talk. You could tell it looked like he was taking him a while to get used to being back in an octagon. Once he got more comfortable, though, I mean, he was constantly up against the fence. You know, Robbie was doing a great job of kind of pressuring him and keep staying in his face. But Nick's boxing looked great. I mean, he threw a lot. I mean, his speed and his hands looked really good. And I think that kind of answers for a lot of the concerns people had with the sparring or the shadow boxing footage of him that they do for like the UFC clips or whatever.
Yeah.
His hands looked complete. That was the fastest part of his performance. In terms of everything else, you know, a little slower. But all in all, we got a great fight here, Dominic, and I'm sure you'll want to give your thoughts, but I want to pose a question that might be more important than even really the thoughts on this fight. You know, this was a legend fight. It was fun. Awesome. But all in all, I think afterwards, it seemed like everybody was split into 2 crowds. You know, your gut reaction coming off the fight. It seemed like 50% of the people watching, the gut reaction was, this was awesome. The 50%'s gut reaction was Nick Diaz needs to retire. What was your gut reaction coming out of the fight? And now that you've had some time to sit on it, do you fall into one side or the other? Do you think both are true? Where do you fall here?
What was my gut reaction? I mean, truthfully, again, when the fight started, I was very worried. That kick was G-Mani. If you didn't see it, go back and watch it. But then after that, again, the fight was great, as Noah mentioned. And it was so weird because Nick was like slow, but is not at the same time. Like his hands look just as crisp as ever. And I just love how they were essentially fighting in a phone booth for 12 or 10 minutes and 44 seconds. They literally couldn't, there was no space between the two. It was dirty boxing 101. The output was absolutely insane. Like what they may have lacked in speed, these two, they made up for an output. I know that going into like the middle of the second round when they showed the stats, they had both already thrown like 150 strikes, or that was at the end of the first round, thrown 150 strikes, 39 and 38 years old. One of them having not fought in 6 years, the other on like a 4 or 5 fight losing streak. So they were going out there to put on a show, and that they did. I was very pleased with it. And, gut reaction, the finish was kind of awkward, right? Because it almost looked like Nick was like holding his knee. So I thought his knee was injured, but then I watched it again and I thought he may have like tweaked something up along the cage, but inevitably I feel like Robbie did kind of break his nose on one of the shots that dropped Nick. Cause he dropped Diaz. And then he was just kind of like, nah, I'm done. He kind of just told the ref that. So, the finish definitely makes it feel a little bit more bittersweet, I guess. But at the end of the day, we knew these two were going to go out and stand and bang. One of them was likely going to go out one way or another. So, pick your poison on which one you would want to see get TKO'd or KO'd. So I don't really have necessarily an issue with the way that the fight finished, because they fought the way that we wanted it to go. And if they fight that way, someone's going to go down, and that's what happened. In terms of what could maybe come next for Nick, I don't know. I don't know if we will see him fight again. He said at the press conference on Thursday that if I go out there and get my ass kicked, I want to get back in there even quicker, and I want to fight again. But I still just didn't feel that way necessarily after when he did the post-fight press conference, and just kind of his body language and everything. He did a great post-fight interview, I will say, and really gave kudos to Robbie and the fans and everything, which was great to see, especially after being out for so long. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, maybe we'll see him in there again, but I'm not gunning for it or, over the top excited. If we do, we do. If not, oh well. But this was just such a perfect Legends fight. I almost feel like, honestly, for either one, they could both ride off into the sunset after this one, and everyone would be pleased with that decision. So, I'm not rather here nor there. I'm just here for, these two legends and what they've done for the sport and paved the way. And here we are now. They both fought 17 years later. Robbie evens the series at 1 apiece. I will say I don't need a trilogy. That we don't need. Let these two kind of do what they want to do, and we'll see what happens.
So, wait, did you fall in? Does that mean you're siding more with this was awesome or that he should retire?
Oh, this was awesome. Yes, sorry.
Okay. I was like, I feel like Dominic didn't answer my question, but anyways.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that was my gut reaction at the time. I limp ending to an otherwise great fight. But I think coming off of it, I feel a little bit of both. I think maybe. I'm not in a place to tell anybody to retire, and I'm not going to do that on here. I'm not going to, everybody else, that's their decision. It's a personal decision. People have really struggled with retirement in the past, and for some people, it's probably saved their lives or added years to their life, So I'm not in a place to tell anybody to do that, and I'm not going to really use my platform on this show to do that. But I'm just saying my reaction being that it felt like Diaz is kind of felt like the chapter's done.
Yeah.
This was a great fight. It was a really fun comeback for him. But it is a little sad though to kind of hear him just not seem like he really wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And it pretty much being completely clear about how, he was kind of there because he had to rather than because he wanted to be. Mm-hmm. That just kind of sucks. It's that's not because everybody was so excited for this fight. And for him to be probably the least excited of everybody else.
Yeah.
I think I saw a tweet that said everybody is excited for Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler except for Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if the Robbie side of things is really true, but it was just really funny. It's just so interesting. I think Nick's I just don't see really where you go from here if you're him. Some of the fights that were, I guess, options coming in here, depending on how he looked, there was mention of Jorge Masvidal and stuff like that. I don't really need to see it,
Yeah.
Nick came in here, he showed that he still had something left, but then, he took some damage, and it was and a really funny quote in the post-fight. He's like, yeah, I started leaking. I didn't want to make a mess.
Yeah.
So
right.
Very funny. But I think it was very clear that he took a little bit of damage and was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too much to say. And I don't blame the guy. I don't need him. I don't need to see these two bleeding buckets. I don't need this to be Robbie, Rory too. I got my fill. They can, this legend fight. Robbie can continue to fight if he wants to. I'm sure he will. If Nick did get another fight with someone, I wouldn't be upset by it either. I don't think he really needs to, especially if he doesn't want to at this point.
Yeah. As a huge Robbie Lawler fan, I just got to ask, what were kind of your thoughts on, I guess, his performance, especially after such a skid that he was on, to at least come out and just have such a high volume, high output, and inevitably get the win? I'm sure that felt good to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, just what you said right there. That was the big takeaways for me. I mean, I'm glad you asked because, yeah, I guess I try to be as unbiased as possible, but ultimately he is my favorite fighter of all time.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, though, it's just been really hard to watch him just kind of run into the Tyron Woodley of thing,
Right.
where they just stop throwing. It's become frustrating, I guess, watching him in his fights with Neil Magny and before that, Colby Covington, Rafael dos Anjos, where I'm not going to say that in his prime he would have killed those guys, like he would have ran through them, but he would have gave them a much harder fight. Here, this felt like a guy turning back the clock a little bit.
Yeah.
Not much. He's still, at the end of the day, you could tell these were two older guys in there trading, but Robbie looked great. He had a great game plan. He stuck to it. He did eat a lot of good shots. I mean, he bobs and weaves with the best of them, but Nick was able to really, pepper him with shots that probably didn't hurt too much, but they were landing and frustrating Robbie. But he just continued to throw some haymakers. I mean, it felt like everything he was throwing was really landing flush. The body work was really nice. Leg kicks to the body, great stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it gave me enough confidence to be like, I wouldn't mind watching Robbie fight a Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
Before this fight, I probably would have said, no, don't do that because Nate Diaz is too good for Robbie at this point. But with that, I'm not opposed to it. I don't know. If he wants to, he's very clear about his stance on, at this point, it's just big fights for him.
Yeah.
So if that's a fight that's available, I think that would be more than proper. But who knows if that's what he'll actually get. I don't know what other fights would make sense, like in terms of like big fights that might excite him. I don't know what else is out there. Because Carlos Condit just retired.
Yeah.
That was like a legend by me. Maybe a Matt Brown type. I don't know. It just, I don't know how many fights are really left for Robbie, but as long as he's still here, I'm going to keep watching and keep supporting my dude, Ruthless.
There you go.
But, yeah. So, Dominic, we have a lot of fights to talk about in the rest. We've already been going for a long time. So I think we're going to give our thoughts, but I'm going to pose a question to each one and answer the question and use that to give your thoughts on the fight kind of deal.
Okay.
We'll do some rapid fire type deal here and see how this goes.
Okay.
So Curtis Blades defeats Jairzinho Rozenstruik via unanimous decision. I mentioned on Friday, I think it's the last fight of his contract, but I don't want to speculate on like if he won't get a contract. Let's assume that him and the UFC work it out and he gets a contract. Is Stipe Miocic the proper fight next for Curtis Blades?
I mean, if you're Curtis, yeah, that fight makes a lot of sense, but there's no way in hell Stipe's going to take a fight with Curtis Blades, in my opinion. So he's kind of left in lingo right now, if I'm being honest. And when you pair that with a less than stellar, a good game plan, but a less than stellar performance, I guess, in the cage in terms of what happened. Granted, he got busted up bad, looked like he might have a broken orbital bone, so he kind of fought with one eye for a round and a half. So I still respect Curtis at the end of the day. But as we kind of discussed on Friday, we needed like a big performance to maybe kind of keep him comfortable in this top of the division. That didn't quite do it. Maybe he'll get re-signed, but Stipe won't happen, I don't believe.
Now, do you think Stipe should take that fight? Because truthfully, based on the way the lay of the land right now, I don't know what fight Stipe could really. I mean, maybe Derek Lewis. I don't know. I don't see where, because it doesn't seem like he's going to fight Jon Jones.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like he's going to get a title fight without having to win one. That's what I'm at this point.
I mean, I guess in that sense, it would make sense maybe for Stipe. But again, just like knowing him and like where his mindset is, I don't see it happening. I honestly see kind of and we'll talk about it in a second. Chris Daukaus might get in there with Blades next, if I'm being honest.
Ooh, that's interesting. I like that. Yeah, probably the dullest fight of the night, but you know, it happens a lot of times with Curtis Blades, man. But
yeah,
he's still a great fighter, so respect.
Of course.
Jessica Andrade runs through Cynthia Calvillo exactly how I thought this fight was going to go.
I agree.
4 minutes, 54 seconds of round number one. Andrade proving that while there is a big step from her to Valentina, it seems like there's a big step from the rest of the division to Jessica Andrade.
Yep.
Dominic, tell me why Jessica Andrade Tatiana Suarez makes a lot of sense.
Oh, you sly dog. Look how you slid that in there. Hey, I love that fight for a multitude of reasons. For one, Jessica Andrade looked absolutely incredible. She's one of the just truest OGs of the UFC women's
I
division.
love my favorite women's fighter, Jessica
Andrade.
Andrade.
What an absolute tank. She went in there, implemented the game plan exactly what we thought she was going to do. Cynthia Calvillo, no answers. I mean, she was trying to pepper her from range, but Andrade ain't going to let you get the space.
It was all defensive. That was the problem for Calvillo. She was throwing a lot of defensive jabs, like trying to keep a distance.
Yeah.
But Andrade was like the predator, just like slowly like creeping in on the prey, you know.
Yeah, and Calvillo was eating bombs, but it was not going to continue that way because Jessica just hits way too hard and inevitably got tongue twisted, led to her getting the finish. Her and Tatiana Suarez, again, incredible fight. Damn, will we see Tatiana get healthy? I know she just came off of that bad knee injury, so she's kind of rehabbing with the brace and just had surgery and stuff. But, you know, she was as elite as they come in the strawweight division. She wants to test the waters at 125. And yes, her original fight was supposed to be with Roxanne Modafferi. At least I think that's what it was. I still think it makes sense to throw in there with Andrade if the timelines line up. Because if you're the UFC, you got to think, well, we're looking for challengers for Valentina. No one else in this division has shown to be close to her, including the former champion, Jessica Andrade. So why not throw Tatiana straight into the wolves? If she gets the win, boom. We at least have a very strong elite level grappler that could maybe throw a little bit of intrigue in a fight with her and Valentina. So I love everything about that fight. A bulldog on the feet with Jessica, an insane grappler, Tatiana Suarez. Ooh-wee, I love it. I'm assuming you do too. That's why you asked.
I do love it. I mean, I think it's appropriate. There is maybe a fear. I was wondering if you might be fearful of like maybe that just being a tough debut for Tatiana Suarez to come straight in after a long layoff, after trying to get healthy, and you're fighting Jessica Andrade. That's a risk that I might be willing to take, though, because a win over Andrade for Suarez, and she's a made woman.
Yeah, you're in.
Title shot all the way.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, Merab Dvalishvili.
Holy
the
shit.
comeback of the night gets the TKO over Marlon Moraes, 4 minutes, 25 seconds of round number 2. Dominic, have you ever seen a fight where about 3/4 of the way through, you're ready to give one fighter a 10-8 round, and then somehow in that last quarter of the round, you're almost convinced to give a 10-9 to the other fighter?
Yeah, this first round of this fight was, again, we kind of talked about this earlier with round 3 of Volk Ortega. This is right up there, too, with round of the year. Round 1 of this fight was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Marlon Moraes did exactly what I thought he was going to do with catching Merab coming in, and he hurt him bad, nearly knocked him out. If Keith Peterson would have stopped the fight, I would have had no issue because he was that close and just wobbling everywhere. But Merab survives. Marlon utterly gasses quickly. And, you know, I would have gassed too because I thought he was going to finish the fight as well. Merab completely does a 180 in this fight, gets Marlon on his back, pummels him to finish the first round. So much so, I scored it a 10-10. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. They both hurt each other pretty bad. I'm just giving them a tie.
You just made up a score?
I scored it 10-10, baby. And then round 2, Merab, utter dominance, showed why he is on a 6-fight win streak, now a 7-fight win streak. He's now in the top 6 of this division, rightfully so. Destroyed Marlon until he inevitably gets the finish, 425 in. This fight was insane. The first round was insane. And yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, I part of me was disappointed only because my big underdog pick of the night was Marlon Moraes.
Yeah,
I thought I said it on Friday. This is the matchup that like best suited his style, and we saw that early.
yeah.
I didn't even know what Merab's chin was like. Well, he showed that he can. I think he showed something here. I mean, yes, he got wobbled bad, and you could. He could have probably been stopped, but to come back, to be able to recover that rate, that's going to carry Merab very far. But man, just how quickly the tides turned here. You know, Marlon just looking like an absolute Terminator, just walking down, chasing down Merab as he's flailing all over the cage. And then as soon as Merab was able to get top position on Marlon, it's like Marlon just wilted. It was done. Into the first round, I'm like, okay, we have a fight. That's my thought.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we have a fight because both guys had their moments in round number 1, hence why Dominic made up a score to give to him, 10-10. And then round number 2, I'm thinking, this is anybody's fight.
Right.
But then you come out and it's like, wait a minute, why does Marlon look so defeated? It felt very much like what Henry Cejudo did to him in that title fight, and what you've kind of seen with Marlon time and time again, just a lack of a gas tank. And whenever his tank goes to E, the guy doesn't really have anything left. It's like it's like mentally he's defeated, physically he's defeated. This was a tough one if you're a Marlon Moraes fan, which we both are, but I mean in the sense of like if you really were on that hill of like Marlon Moraes can still be a contender, I don't know if there's any coming back, for Marlon at this point to be what he was in 2018, 2017, and before that.
Yeah, that was tough.
Man, there's got to be some fun fights still left for Marlon Moraes. I mean, look at what happened here. This fight was awesome.
Yeah.
To be on the prelims of all places, awesome stuff. Merab Dvalishvili, top 10. Looking forward to what's next for him.
Oh, yeah.
The guy's skill set's very good. I'm looking forward to that. Dan Hooker. It's the unanimous decision win over Nasrat Haqparast. He gets back on track, and he did it by evolving his game quite a bit. A lot of grappling here for Dan Hooker, not something that we used to seeing with him, especially not as of late. And, this was kind of a win that was necessary for Dan Hooker. It was a win maybe in some ways expected because Nasrat being the unranked fighter, Dan being in the top 10, probably a win he should get. But doing it in the fashion he did, really able to neutralize the powerful Haqparast. All in all, good performance. Not sure if it'll really do much for him in terms of definitely probably not going to be fighting ahead in his next fight. He'll probably still have to fight from behind, but a good win to keep him on track, keep him in this top of the heap at lightweight. And considering what these two came into the octagon with, the kind of baggage they had, these guys deserve all the bonuses. I hope the UFC gives them some sort of bonus off the record or whatever, one of those, just give them a bag of money like they did to Davison that one time.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, you're good.
Dan Hooker, again, like you said, kind of pulled a rabbit out of the hat, showed some new skills in his game, especially after such a wild training camp, or lack thereof, I should say, going into this. Then the travel issues. Nasrat was in there. He was gritty. And I thought the grappling would be in favor of Nasrat. So for Dan to go out there and out-grapple him and really look great doing it was quite impressive. And it was just a great fight. Good for Dan to get back into the win column, being that he was sitting in that number 8 spot. And for Nasrat, I feel like there wasn't really much to lose. If you were him, you were getting catapulted into the top 10 without a ranking even next to your name. And if anything, you showed you're at least tough and gritty with one of the most top-level guys in this stacked division. So excited to still see what comes from Nasrat. And, of course, Dan Hooker. It's always good to see him get his hand raised. He called out Beneil Dariush. Don't know if that'll happen, but a fun call-out nevertheless.
Yeah, still a good call-out. Dariush, based on the interview I watched with him, he just seems like, he kind of understands that, even though he's ranked as high as he is, that he's probably going to have to, he seems very aware of, the fact that he's not the biggest name, he's doesn't have a ton of leverage, I guess, to get himself a title shot right now. So I like how his mindset's kind of he probably could take a fight with Dan Hooker. Totally could be next for him. And I wouldn't be upset by it either.
Yeah.
Heavyweights, Chris Daukaus remains undefeated in the UFC. Is he undefeated as a whole?
Yep. No, not undefeated as a whole, but 4-0 in the UFC.
Yeah. Gets a TKO over Shamil Abdurrahimov. Minute 23 seconds of round number 2. This was a fun fight, just heavy hitters hitting heavy. And, Chris Daukaus showing what a dog he is. This man, am I wrong? Did I see him flip off Shamil Abdurrahimov? Was there a moment where, Shamil, there was something happened, they kind of touched gloves, and then Chris Daukaus just flips them off?
Yeah, something happened. And yes, you are not wrong. I saw that too.
Hilarious. But then right after that, Daukaus gets the finish. So, what a fucking dog, man. This was a great performance. This really felt, I think this was Chris Daukaus' coming out party in some sense. It's hard. It's hard because he doesn't really stand out in terms of the fact that this was a night filled with standout moments. But in terms of just the stage he was on, obviously the opponent, how highly ranked Abdurakhimov is, this was his moment, and he passed in flying colors. I'm totally not on the team. I'm not on team Aspinall versus Dawkins right now.
No.
I'm not into that fight right now. I think Dawkins is deserving of going up.
Yeah.
So, Dominic, is their opponent? Well, I think you already mentioned. So you think Curtis Blades and Chris Dawkins should be next?
I think it makes sense. I mean, again, I don't think Curtis is going to get any of the guys ahead of him. And he's already fought Volkov, who's behind him. So why not? Chris Dawkins is going to smash in literally to the top 10. He's going to be number 7, more than likely, maybe higher. He had quite an impressive performance. He essentially knocked out Shamil 2 or 3 different times in the fight, but it got stopped at that point, a minute 23 into round 2. Dawkins looked amazing. As Chris, the boxer, you're going to see in this division, especially of the new wave, him and Aspinall leading the charge. We don't need that now. I think that's a potential fight in the future with, 2 of the brighter young up-and-comers in this division. Save that for then. Right now, Chris Dawkins, welcome to the top 10. Go test yourself against a dominant grappler. And Curtis Blades, we'll see how ready you really are.
Yeah, I guess if I'm the UFC, I'm going to have to take a hard look at that matchup, because do you want to feed a really exciting up-and-comer to potentially be kind of in a long, drawn-out, boring fight with Curtis Blades that he might get dominated in? I don't know. That's not what we do here, though. We match make the best of the best with the best of the best. Come on.
Essentially.
All right. Tyler Santos gets a dominant unanimous decision win over Roxanne Modafferi.
Great performance.
The Roxanne back and forth, the 50-50 is over for her. She's been on a win one, lose one for a long time.
Yeah.
This is now 2 in a row. But for Tyler Santos, this was a big win. Even though Roxanne, like, you looked at the two of them and the odds going in were hugely in Taylor Santos' favor. I thought those odds were kind of crazy, to be honest with you. Like, Santos is really good. But Roxanne, just when you count her out is when she fucking excels. And I thought that there was a chance that might happen here. Nope. Santos, completely dominant. Awesome performance. Glad she's in the top 10, and I'm very excited to see what's next.
Yeah, she's someone I'm very high on in this division. Again, when you have Valentina as the champ, it's kind of hard to say if anyone will be a test for her necessarily as a future contender, but I do think Taylor has the potential to be a future title challenger at that. So I'm excited to see what comes next from her. A full-on, well-rounded performance against a legend of women's MMA, and to go out there and dominate the way she did says a lot in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what will come next.
Jalen Turner,
wow,
the Tarantula.
Prove me wrong.
Gets the sub over Uros Medic. Yeah, I thought Uros was going to win this fight and win it in the fashion that Jalen essentially won this in.
Yep, I agree.
And Jalen put it on him, though. Literally from pillar to post, from the beginning of the round to the end. Jalen Turner was the bully in that cage. I mean, everything he threw hurt Uros. And then ultimately finishing it with the sub. This guy's really come alive here as of late. And, I just thought it was worth giving him a shout out for this performance because, one, we kind of didn't expect it, even though the odd makers had it very close. And there was a lot of people on Jalen Turner's side.
Yeah.
We weren't really – I just really liked what Uros had shown me in his last couple fights. However, the Tarantula strikes again. And he now is – I mean, he's creeping closer and closer, Dom, to tougher competition. And, with his kind of style and frame, he's a tough matchup for a lot of people that are far ahead of him right now.
Yeah, reminds me of the old Tarantula from when I was growing up with the UFC, Mr. Kendall Grove. Very long, very rangy. Yep. And Jalen Turner, that new wave of fighter, and it's the evolution of his game for me because he's looking great. Once known as a striker, now won 2 fights in a row via submission on a 3-fight win streak in total. All 11 wins via finish. Jalen Turner had hype coming into the UFC, faltered a bit, and now he's right back on it. So shout out to him. Medic going into that was 7-0, all finishes as well. So for Jalen to just dominate him like he did, amazing performance. Can't wait to see him back in the cage.
I think we did pretty good there with the rapid fire. We are now done with the MMA Weekend Recap. Let us know your thoughts on all the action that took place Saturday. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Took place Saturday night. What do you think's next for the winners and losers? Let us know all that. We'll feature it on the podcast. But regardless, Dominic will be back on Friday to give the weekend preview once again. But until then, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, Friday, Bellator UFC. Can't wait. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram in the meantime at DSlee14. You can find the podcast on Twitter, Instagram at BAJ_MMA podcast, baby. Without the baby.
And for me, Twitter, Instagram at ntbaker_. If you go to the link in my bio, it'll take you to a link tree that'll provide you with a list of links that don't even remember my outro anymore. That list of links, all the platforms the podcast is on, along with social media platforms. That includes, but is not limited to, kind of is, the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcast. It's all on there, baby. And there's a couple links for today's sponsor, Anchor.
Shout out.
Leaving a voice message. Do it.
Come on.
If you would like to have your thoughts featured or your voice featured on an episode of the podcast, make sure to leave your thoughts at that link. We will feature it here and give our thoughts on your thoughts. How's that sound?
Ooh, that does sound fun.
And there's a link on there if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. Just provides us with a small sum of money a month. All that money goes back into improving the quality of the podcast. That's it. We're out. We're going to see y'all on Friday.
We'll see you then.